Now this is the epic tale of our epic Moab adventures where nothing went as planned. So join us around the campfire as we recount the adventures.
So that's the only reason your rear end hasn't fallen out.
You're bound to learn a thing or two.
What are we looking at? What's the problem? So, 10 pounds of 5-pound bag. Got it.
I'm traveling with my good friend Parnell, who offered to help me with my drawer system one day and has since spent countless hours on my 80 series. And Mike, my best friend, going back a long time, who finally joined me on these overland adventures. Sit back and enjoy the chaos. Oh, what an adventure.
Oh my God.
I knew it was going to be an adventure and not go according to plan, because when I picked up Parnell, we started going down the freeway and his case in the back of the truck was going, and I was like, what is that? And Parnell said, oh, I started my trip by having to toss my case over a 9-foot fence so I could get to my Uber. All right. Picked him up. We had, of course, at that time, no idea what was going to happen.
Well, none of us did.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah, well, so that's kind of how you landed in Colorado. I left, I had every intention of leaving Arizona, dark 30, roll out. I eventually got on the road by 10 a.m.
So we all met up in Moab.
Yep.
We started out right. We went to the pork place to have a meal, our last meal in civilization, our very last one.
Turns out it was a good move.
Well, then why did you order at Sparks and GC? Well, because I was panicked. It was pretty good barbecue.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Gearheads
Yeah.
in Utah. Great
store.
Shop.
Yeah, great store.
Great store. Just if you need things before you head out on the trail, Gearheads in Utah. That's a little pro tip there. And then had a good meal and headed out to, the Gemini Bridges area.
So we spent a lot of time in Gemini Bridges area.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
Just back and forth. It became like the center base camp of everything we were kind of doing.
Right.
Although
plans got thwarted.
I never got to see the actual Gemini Bridges because we couldn't stop and
bucket list item.
Take a look at it.
Now, bucket list item for Parnell. We kept passing it. Never got to see it.
Where are these bridges? Why do they call it Gemini Bridges? Oh, they're over there. Okay. Can we? No, I'm not going to say anymore.
he wanted to hike, and I said, no, it's too hot.
It was too hot. I agree with that.
And then everywhere we'd been, we wanted to walk somewhere. Parnell was like, no, it's too hot. And so I thought, well, it's too hot. He doesn't want to do it. But
and
then he's
Social
like,
Pants is like, I got this truck for a reason. Why am I walking everywhere?
That's true. It's got air-conditioned seats for a reason, bro. Like.
So, yeah, passed out a couple of times.
Yeah.
First night was awesome. Plateau views, epic sunset. Sunset.
Absolutely beautiful.
These locations are available on Overland Bound One, by the way, right here. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
Great night. And then we rolled out for our first adventure, which was out Canyonlands and out Long Canyon Road.
Yes. That was driving down that is unbelievable. That's just a great trail, not super complicated.
Start at the top, y'all.
Yeah, start at the top and go down. And the Pucker Pass is not, they come up with these names to make it seem like it's going to be a difficult trip, but that was, a car wouldn't make it, but any four-wheel drive with decent tires
You need a stock four-wheel drive, and Pucker Pass is intimidating because you basically you drop about 2,000 feet into a canyon.
Yeah.
And then there's a rock that's fallen over the trail, and when you approach it, it looks like
you won't fit, but no problem.
Big.
My van would make it underneath there, no problem. Yeah, that was.
But you can't have. That's one of the things being out in such an epic environment is it's hard to judge scale.
Yeah,
it is very hard.
You do not get the scale from the video.
Hey, right up here from the beginning, before people tune out because we're boring and we're just yarning on, let's just say. These trails that are easy, they are easy if we say they're easy, meaning you can get down there with a stock four-wheel drive vehicle, but we probably really helped, if not rescued, 5 people just casually, going around Moab, Utah, people just unprepared, willy-nilly, just off into the environment. Just be prepared, do a little research in advance, make sure you have the basics, four-wheel drive, capable vehicle, plenty of water, and communications. There, that line is covered.
Also, in a place like Moab,
Yep.
you are surrounded by 5 national parks,
Yep.
right? Check in with the park rangers. They know
Tell
the
them you're out
current
there.
conditions of
Yep.
the trails. They can help you. We ran into people that were off in like a Ford Escape. Nothing wrong with that vehicle. A lot wrong with it out on one of those trails.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Rolled up to me, rolled down his window, looked at me with his wife, who was not too happy, and said, "I shouldn't be here." And I said, "Correct." Because just getting up to where my truck was, those little bitty tires were breaking the sound barrier, trying to spin, get up that hill. It was not great.
Yeah, we literally saw a Porsche Cayenne
Yeah.
coming up one of the trails.
In a
and
washed-out
He
valley.
ended up turning around before you got to him, but
Yeah.
I don't know how far he got as far as he did.
Yeah.
So I think the other thing to be aware is just regular street tires on rocky terrain is a bad idea.
Yep.
Especially if you only have one, or like with a lot of modern vehicles, no spare.
Yeah.
And you got to have a way to communicate with people.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a Garmin InReach or something like that, be careful and don't get too far out where if you did have a mechanical problem, and mechanical problems pop up
All
in
the
all
time.
vehicles.
No way.
And they do.
They do. They do.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. So, but you have to have a way, if you're going to go out by yourself, like most of the, distant camping I've done has been just me and my family. So when we go out, I always make sure I have some method of communicating with the world if one of my kids is to get hurt or, I'm to stub a toe and have a meltdown.
And
if you don't, you don't want to be walking 5 miles carrying a box full of water.
That means Garmin InReach, Starlink, or something of equivalent. Not your cell phone. That's not communications. Yeah. And even though we all use ham radio because it's superior in terms of radio transmission, that doesn't count either if you're off grid. You got to have satellite comms. So that's a Garmin InReach, or if you got the Starlink or something like that, you need that. You need communications. So many of these tales that you hear about, this family went out and the worst happened. So many things could be avoided with good comms.
I mean, the German couple that were, on the White Rim Trail with that car.
Yeah. They would have been.
Sun goes down and
they were headed out. He's like, "Hey, we don't want to go back up that switchback." And as soon as he said switchback, his wife was like, "We're not going to do that." Yeah. She didn't speak English. They were German, but it was clear she did not want to go back up. So they were hauling ass out on White Rim Trail, and I was like, "Guys, that's a 2-day, 90-mile trip. You got to go back." Sorry.
Yep. And it shows as a road. Like if you use any, like
Google.
If you look at Google Maps, it shows as a road.
Apple Maps, sure, just keep going.
Potash Road, to kind of segue back to where we were. When we went down Long Canyon, we came back around Potash Road and came back up into Canyonlands. That's a road on Google. It's a legitimate road.
Yep.
But without a four-wheel drive, that is not as legitimate
as you may think.
Road. And so that's what happens. I think that's one of the big problems is people see these roads and just think, oh, I can get out that way. There's the road. And then they start down Potash, and all of a sudden they get to that creek crossing where there's no way you're getting across that without four-wheel drive in a little car, and they try to make it.
Yep.
And then you end up with that Jeep Cherokee that you'll see in, I'm sure, one of the videos that the guy tried to drive across that creek and it didn't work out well.
That's another foreshadowing moment. Like now that I live in Arizona, that's one of the #1 rules. When you come across a flash flood or running water, under no circumstances, I don't care if you have the rigs we have, do you cross that?
You do.
Because even though it may look like a little stream, you don't know what kind of logs are underneath it or rocks that just come in and whoop.
Yeah.
And
like that car in downtown Moab that got hit by that log, and that guy, the water was probably 6 inches deep, but when that whole log hit the side of his car, it just pushed his car right out of the way. And he was lucky to pin the car up against the lamppost and he didn't go anywhere. But
now my final tip about the Long Canyon is probably the morning. Go down the morning. Because we happened to go down in the morning. We didn't plan it that way, but we happened to go down in the morning, and when the sun's coming up and it goes across that canyon.
It was like 8:30, 8:45-ish when we started.
Really
and
nice.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Now we went down to the bottom of the Long Canyon. We took a moment, and just by chance, ran into an Overland Bound, somebody who works with us, Bennett and Matt, Elizabeth and Matt. And so we touched base with them, and then they went out to Chicken Corners.
Which is where we were going to try to go.
Wait now, they went out for a nice evening on the plateau.
For a nice evening.
Yeah, and we went back down to Potash and back out to, did we end up in Gemini Bridges again?
We had planned that day to just do a nice loop. We're casing the joint, we're getting the lay of the land.
Yeah.
So we had planned on a nice loop, and then we ended up
back off Gemini Bridges, but we went
to Thelma and Louise.
Oh right, that was on Potash.
Yeah. Went out Potash quite a ways.
Yeah, and looped around, and that was great. That overlook was awesome.
By the way, that drive. Let's talk about Potash for a minute. That drive is beautiful from both directions. So last year when I was here, I started in Canyonlands, came down the switchbacks, went out Potash, which is BLM land, around, like I called it the Horseshoe Bend. It's not that, but it's, you know, it's kind of like that. And then the Thelma and Louise spot. And driving from that direction is gorgeous. But we came in the backside and went back up the switchbacks. And that's a whole different experience, which was awesome to me because that was the first for me going that direction. We would end up doing it twice before it's over with. We'll get to that.
So we went around, and then we took a different direction. We wanted to go a little bit more remote, find a new camp spot, because that's what we do. We try and find different camp spots, and then we rolled up on the nice plateau views that sort of, you couldn't see Moab because it was over the hill a ways, but we knew exactly where Moab was, and it wasn't too far. We got our stuff set up. And so we were all chipper, right?
So I like this camp. So there's a couple of things about this campsite that I liked that probably helped exacerbate later problems. But Michael likes to find campsites that have gatekeepers on them.
And this definitely has a gatekeeper.
This definitely had a gatekeeper.
That ledge is a gatekeeper for sure.
Just going into the trail, we had to climb over a few rocks that were pretty large, and they're hanging off the side of a little cliff. Not huge, but enough to make you, go question where you're going. And then we had the little ledge that dropped, and we kind of drug our tails across it pretty good. Thank goodness for armor. But the reason that's important is the likelihood of someone else rolling up on camp that night was zero.
Yeah,
basically,
and especially with the weather.
Yeah, and if they did, we would have heard them coming for a mile because the armor makes a lot of noise when it slams across rock.
Yeah, that's right. Now, I don't know why, but we were going out to our campsite, and all the locals were hightailing it back to town. I had no idea why.
Everybody was running away, and we're like, "It's just Sunday, or what? No, it was Saturday. It was Saturday, wasn't it?"
Yes, it was Saturday. Yeah, it was Saturday.
We set up camp, and the clouds started getting dark, and it was. I mean, it got our attention.
Michael, come look, people. We're at camp at daylight, which is always important. However, there's a storm coming. Hopefully it's not coming at us.
Yeah, there were, when those three clouds, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that, whether it's the heat from the rocks or whatever it was, when those three clouds formed that one big cloud and then the wind started, I'm like, there might be some weather tonight.
It looked like
it went from blue sky, beautiful, and where we were actually stayed really nice 90% of the time, other than the wind. It went from blue sky, beautiful, to you couldn't see 2 miles down the ridge because of the sheet heavy rain that was falling out of those clouds.
And just black, blue, dark clouds.
It looked like something you would see in the middle of Kansas in tornado season. Like I thought a tornado or a funnel was going to drop.
It looked like to me, it looked like the whole evening throughout the entire thing was a special effect in a movie.
Never seen anything like that.
I was looking at it, I'm like, this is nuts. I've never seen clouds
and all we had was
form
wind.
that quickly and start dumping down rain. And the funny thing, 2 miles in any direction except that one little spot where we were, which would have been totally safe. Even if it poured rain there, we were in a good
Don't camp
spot.
in a wash, right? We knew that. We just knew, like, hey, don't camp in a wash.
We had high ground.
Yeah.
We knew there was, so going into this, we actually knew there was like a 25% chance of rain.
Yeah.
And it had been kind of sprinkling here and there. So we were aware that we were probably going to have, and Friday night we had some rain overnight, just some sprinkles.
Yeah.
Nothing bad. It was actually great for sleeping.
Yeah.
But so we were on high ground.
And so we were like, wow, that is incredible. Look at that. And I was doing a little talking head piece, and you guys are like, get that cloud, get that cloud. And then it was when those clouds merged together, and I put the camera up there, and the video doesn't show it, but it looked like it was coming to get us.
It looked like a spaceship. It looked like a spaceship.
It was just like,
and then all the sideways lightning.
here we go. Coming in. Now so now the lightning's increased, and our current concern is that these clouds are merging, and we're starting to feel the water. Rain is coming down now, and the wind is really kicked up, and just pretty consistent lighting. So this stuff is lightning. So this stuff is coming closer to us. And holy crap. Oh, this is our friend coming right now. Holy. That is a UFO. I don't know if you guys can see it on the camera, but it is just coming right over us.
Yep. And that is also something to probably talk about is if you're out in these lightning environments, you do not want to be on the top of, we had all that high rock around us, so it wasn't too bad. But even where we were is a little bit, thank God, one of our camp members has a lightning rod, which was the tallest thing in the
You mean my aluminum roof nest?
Yeah.
He was definitely the highest point in camp. So just make sure you don't got to be faster than the bear. You just got to be faster than somebody else in the party. Make sure your truck isn't the tallest truck in a lightning storm.
Yeah. And we were just saying, I don't know what drainage that water is falling into, but whatever drainage that water falls into,
that's right,
is going to be a massive.
We're like,
flood.
this is terrible. Whatever that is dumping into, it's going to be a huge deal.
I remember making the comment, like we're looking at it, and you could see, and there's probably video we can roll up, but there's like this giant cliff ledge. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then there's layers of cliff ledges. I mean, that's Moab, right? It's just gorgeous. And as that storm rolled in, just this giant sheet of rain covered everything except that. And it's like that cliff edge held it back.
Yeah.
And you could see it. And we were looking at the compass and I'm like, that's Moab south of us. And if that's Moab south of us, Bennett and Matt are at Chicken Corners.
There.
This is bad.
Yeah.
This is really bad. And we didn't know how bad it was yet. But holy cow.
Yeah,
we woke up next morning and made it into Moab and saw the just unbelievable amount of destruction in the downtown Moab. Was 2 feet deep of water. And we were a bit lighthearted going in because we had the 45-minute colorful rainbow fireworks show. Yeah. It passed, the storm went by, and then there was that, it was just a moment in time, skies cleared, no wind, and that.
That is crazy. That is really unbelievable. I have never seen a rainbow that vibrant all the way from one side to the other.
And that freaking rainbow and everything.
From our point of view, we had like strong wind, some rain. We watched this massive supercell storm.
It was crazy.
Just go across the south, and then we had the most unbelievable rainbow you'd ever seen. And then we got up the next morning. It's like birds are chirping and things are great, and we're like, well, let's go to Chicken Corners.
Literally, I don't think it even barely drizzled on us that day.
We got spit on, we got some rain, we were under the awning for 10 minutes.
15, 20 minutes of real rain. And I wouldn't even call it real rain, just it wet.
Overland Pro's awning out in the weather, no problem. We did have to tie it down. But.
An abundance of caution because I've learned that lesson. Rolled into Moab, and
it was unbelievable. We talked to a park ranger at one point who said he'd lived here 10 years and they'd never seen anything like it.
Yep.
We were looking up news stories because we finally had internet when we got to Moab, and it was literally what we didn't know was happening while we were on top of that mountain was they were evacuating Moab they had established emergency orders keeping people out of town because there was literally 3-4 feet of a river.
Cars being washed through town.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was unreal.
3 feet of water, like you said, just 3 feet of water, all the stores, I mean, and so rolling in, we saw the aftermath, just a dust bowl plus the mud. Everybody in town helping, amazing. Everybody was going to work.
And I will say, I've got dash cam video of me driving through town just kind of shocked.
Yeah.
Which is an honest moment because it's capturing things in real time.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, okay, our goal that day was to head into town, pick up some supplies. We were going to head out toward Chicken Corners. But then it started occurring to me like what I was thinking the night before about, well, Bennett and Matt are out there.
Yep.
Flash floods. If this happened in downtown Moab, I'd been out Hurrah Pass before, and I knew there were like 3 or 4 water crossings. I'm like, that might be this might turn into a very different day.
So we headed out.
So
it was like so that was the deal. It's like, hey, they're out there. Who else is out there?
Yeah.
This is a mess in town.
It's only going to be worse out of town.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then we rolled up.
Sure enough.
We came across that first little
Cage
Creek.
Creek.
Where they were cleaning that creek out.
Yeah, the first little one.
Yeah, there's a backhoe cleaning a little creek out that we went through.
Yeah, and we were kind of like, oh, that's not bad. This will be okay.
A little bit of mud, no worries. And then we went on, and then we drove around the corner, and it was pandemonium with Jeep rentals that were...
Yeah, mud up to, past the axles and, buried, and we could just see what had washed through there by the aftermath. Just everything in mud, and the kind of mud that is like, you get in that, you're not coming out.
You had when I rolled up...
I'm not quite sure what the renter of that blue Gladiator was thinking. Super nice guy. And when I finally got up to the Jeep, he said, my wife was hitting me and hitting me. She was hitting me and screaming, stop this car, stop this car.
Yeah.
His wife, his wife was right. He should stop.
And so to your point, when I rolled up on the scene, I think there's probably a video on my dash cam of me on the radio with you guys going, well, there's a traffic jam up here. And I rolled up, I go, whoa, this is bad. This is really bad. And then I got out, and to your point, the wives were up on, and they were clearly upset and kind of panicking. And then they had told me that literally the sheriff's helicopter had just left.
Yeah.
And airlifted whoever was in the Jeep Cherokee.
Yeah.
So this goes back to what we said earlier.
You guys.
They tried to cross a flooded area, and they got washed away, and that Cherokee was just crumbled like a piece of aluminum foil.
Crumbled, buried in mud. The windshield was smashed in. I looked in. The keys are still in the ignition, and it was like this was a bad scene. The driver nowhere to be found, and like
apparently,
you said, he found out they'd been airlifted.
They airlifted out, and the sheriff's department was going to send somebody back, but we happened to be on the scene.
One of the best things to keep in mind is that when you're in an extreme situation like the driver of that Jeep, your heart rate's up, you're doing things that are kind of primal, and I'm sure he was thinking, I got to get back to civilization, this is bad. And that was what was on his mind. But just be aware, if your adrenaline is up, you don't necessarily know your adrenaline's up. So in those situations, unless there is a boulder rolling down the mountain, you need to get out of the way. In those situations, just take a moment, just think, and the one thing is just remember, don't cross a wash like that you don't know, but just try and take a moment, breathe, get your heart rate down, and you'll start making, better decisions. Things go bad fast.
This is a hypothesis, right? But also living in Arizona for 6 months now, I've watched a lot of this in monsoon seasons. I think people panic if they don't have equipment and or food or water, and it's hot, and they're like, oh God, I got to get back. I can't not go through this. But the reality is these flash floods are flash for a reason. They're gone in 2 hours. So even if you're stuck somewhere, that stuff will go away. Now, this left an aftermath of like, you're not going to pass it. You had to wait on a tractor. However, places like Arizona and Utah, they get these every year. So they do have the equipment, and they do maintain these roads. Now, 300 yards past this point is non-maintained road.
Yeah.
And so that's where things get funky. But at least we were in a spot where it's maintained. So if you come up on a place and you know it's maintained, it's best just to wait it out. You're probably only going to wait 4 or 5 hours. It's not like you're going to be trapped for days.
Yeah.
That's unlikely.
And I mean, that goes back to you cannot go off in these areas without ample water supply for days.
Yes.
Just
you
in
can't
case.
go out without some form of food, even if it's a few, protein bars, you're better off. And you can't go out in these environments where you are like that wash was not one of these environments. You could have walked out of there, no problem, an hour after that flash flood. You're not driving out, but you could have walked out.
Yeah.
But you could get out, if you're like out on the way to, even on the way to Chicken Corners, we were halfway out to Chicken Corners and there's a problem. You need a way to communicate with people to, one, tell your family and anyone who's concerned about you, hey, I'm safe.
Yeah.
I have 3 days of water and food. I'm going to hang out here for a day.
Well,
and then I'm going to reassess and see what happens.
So you just brought up another good point, right? We didn't know what we were facing. We were on that rock watching everything happen. We walked into town like, well, it rained. We'll see what happens. We didn't know how bad it was. As soon as I had cell reception, my phone was blowing up, right?
Yeah.
My mother was like, are you guys okay?
Yep.
Like, because she knew we were out in the wild, right? And had not heard from us. And so it was one of those, like, what's going on? So this made, like, national news. It was so bad.
Yeah, and then
no one called me and asked if I was okay.
We didn't care.
Not one person.
You were with us. We're the ones that love you. Obviously, people back home don't love you.
The 2 people.
You have 2 people that love you, Parnell. That's all that matters. And I'm sus on certain days.
So we did the recovery. You did the recovery.
Yeah.
We had 2 winch failures, which I won't dive too far into, but definitely thinking about
one catastrophic and one just dangerous.
Yeah.
Like I'll talk about it. Like let's talk about it. Like we'll obviously I have a Warn winch on the front of my truck. They've been around for 100 years or whatever they are. But, every time we would get a lot of stress on the line, the clutch would kick out. And we'd have to go back, and Michael would go back in front of the truck and clutch it back. Now, that seems okay. And at first I thought, well, maybe that's a safety feature to keep it from snapping and stuff. But the problem with that is you were standing in the line of fire. If that thing would have snapped, it would have taken your head off.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem.
What if you're winching someone up a hill? That can't be a safety feature because if you were winching it takes off back down the hill. Let's say we're winching that guy up a steep incline that he can't drive up by himself. We get him near the top. That clutch opens up like that.
Out.
He's going right to the bottom.
That's right.
Because especially after you're stuck or you're jacked up, unless you have a ton of experience, you're going to lose the big picture and you're going to the bottom of the ravine.
So and if you get you get enough momentum, and it might not just be his truck.
Yeah, and it
might be your truck too.
Who knows? And that's why when you're doing any kind of recovery, you need to get all the bystanders out of the way. So when we were pulling these people out, I'm glad we got there because, they're running back to town to get ropes and and then all the people are standing right between the 2 vehicles, and when you're doing a recovery, you need to make sure everyone is out of the way. And it was hard to keep all those people out of the way.
And my instinct having to reset the clutch all the time was like, I'm in a bad spot. This not right at all.
And me controlling the winch, I literally let Michael direct it because he was the one that was closest to danger.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't push that button. I didn't move my vehicle. I didn't do anything unless Michael gave me the okay, because he would go in and go out and go in and go out. But that was the other thing too. I'll say this, and it sounds sort of snarky, but look, I think this is even good practice for what happens later, right? Is when you roll up on a problem or you get stuck or you have a problem, you need to take some time to think it through and relax. Because here's what I rolled up on in that scene that struck me the minute I got out of the truck. There's 2 Jeeps stuck in the mud. They're trying every redneck way possible to pull it out. Nothing wrong with that. I'm a redneck. I get that. But you got 50 people around with cameras that are just filming everything for social media, which gives them a false sense of security because as somebody who films a lot, you're behind the camera. They were running into the danger zone.
Oh, yeah.
They were stepping and slipping in mud. They were doing all sorts of stuff. And it's like, hey, this is a dangerous situation. This is not a fun TikTok moment.
Yeah.
This could end badly for someone here.
Put your camera away, focus on the problem. And I think really all it takes, And, you know, we're not some great group of experts, but I just popped my shoes off. I walked down there. I'm like, hey, guys, everyone out of the way. Calm down. Here's what we're going to do. And all of a sudden, people go, oh, shoot, these guys are in charge. Let's just get out of the way.
Yep. And by the way, you'll notice the only real footage we have is my dash cam video. Right. Because we weren't doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
We were like, this is a situation. This is not time for YouTube.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah. We should have gotten some footage.
It would have been great, but you know.
But yeah, like when I walked down to the guy in the blue Gladiator, which the common comment that people were making is that's a Rubicon. He's got lockers. He should be able to make it through there. I'm like, he's in 2.5 feet of mud.
There's nothing
you can do with essentially, you know, a street tire.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no lockers are not going to help. And even after we pulled those 2 Jeeps out, there was a guy in a side-by-side who was testing to see if he might be able to make it. And finally, Mike just said to him, did you see what we just did? Pulled those people out?
Yeah.
And he really thought, with his wife in the vehicle, that he was going to make it through that 2 feet of mud that was 100 yards long, and then climb a 5-foot sand embankment that was essentially vertical.
And
unbelievable.
You know, Mike,
and there was a tractor that pulled up behind him. Mike, doing it. I told the tractor, the guy on the tractor, I said, what's that guy doing? I said, trying to die.
Mike finally went up to the guy and was like, hey, you sure you want to do that? There's a backhoe right there about to clear this out. At that point, I guess he listened to reason. Yeah.
He left. He was like, hold on.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
But there were numerous people that thought that Rubicon Gladiator should have had no.
Yeah, and you guys, your vehicle, your built-out vehicle, you spend a lot of money on, and you put all the best hardware on. Your vehicle is just a frickin' toy to be slapped around by Mother Nature. You will absolutely right away find its limits.
And a little bit more foreshadowing, right? Like, know your vehicle.
Yeah.
Like, for me, so I'll tell a quick story. This is 1 year to the day that I did Moab last year.
Yeah.
Right. Last year, I was very conservative, right, and did a lot of super easy trails. This year, I pushed my vehicle a little bit. Part of that was I was with somebody and not by myself.
That's huge.
Very
that is huge.
Yeah, very important.
Not that you need it, but that is a huge comfort.
I have
generally never had.
Me
either.
Huge comfort. And like you're in the desert, right? I have another winch point.
Yeah.
If it doesn't fail, I have another winch point.
Yeah.
And you can't just wrap your winch around a cactus. It ain't gonna work, or a rock. The second thing was, I was more experienced this time. And so there were things I would do in my vehicle that I would not have done a year ago, and I trusted it. But then there were all the other obstacles we came along where I said, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
A, I'm not ready for it psychologically. B, my truck might do it, but I'm not ready for it. And the reason I tell that story is, I think these were literally rental vehicles that we pulled out of the mud.
Yeah, they're both.
I think they looked at it and went, "Hey, we have a 4-wheel drive." Again, this is a hypothesis. I'm not putting words in their mouth. I don't know what their decision was, but they looked at it and went, "We have a 4-wheel drive. It's a Gladiator. We can go through anything." That's not true.
And so know your vehicle, to your point. Know your vehicle.
And err on the side of caution.
Extreme caution.
It goes. In weather. Yeah, even if you're just on a trail, it goes from everyone smiling and having a great time to tragedy in a second. And you just be
cautious.
Accidents
don't happen because they're planned.
Yeah.
They're accidents, and they usually go sideways really fast, especially when you're off-road.
We had a decision to make at that time. Okay, so we did the recovery at that point. You know, we knew that our friends, Bennett, Matt, they were okay because the backhoe came through, and so we decided on Parnell's suggestion we were going to go out and go along Colorado River and find ourselves an adventure, and so we did, and we went up the mountain. I forget what the mountain was.
I don't.
Porcupine Ridge is where we ended up.
Porcupine Ridge is where we ended up, but we went a circuitous route.
That campsite marked on the Overland Bound One. If you have an opportunity to go to that Porcupine Ridge campsite,
I'd call it bucket list.
Unbelievable.
Roll that footage.
Unbelievable.
Right
yeah. You're literally on
I couldn't believe it.
On it. We didn't 100% realize it when we were there until I hiked down a little bit and looked back at the level of overhang that rock sits out on.
Now,
But you're in a position that is just gorgeous.
So-
it's incredible.
So, but to set this up properly, I think we had planned on going to Chicken Corners that day. Clearly that failed because we were rescuing people. And then the tractor showed up. We thought, well, maybe we can get through it, but it was 3 p.m.
Yeah.
So we made the decision, like, it's a 6-hour in and out. We may not find anything. We don't know what else is out there.
yeah,
Right.
what other roads are washed out? Again, so we erred on the side of caution.
And so we head out that way. What surprised me on that, and this is the setup for me, 15 minutes out of Moab, which is all this rock and western amazing, is a forest that we went up to 8,500 feet
Yeah.
on top of a mountain to this
With
spot
aspens and
with aspen trees and pine trees, and then overlooking all those rocks. I mean,
Yeah.
it was so amazing.
and
So
that
we-
was go ahead.
No, we knew there could be views out there because we were so high up, and that's what we were kind of seeking. Is we were like, hey, we passed a couple of good. There's a great
Oh, yeah.
campsite with aspens.
Yep.
It was great, but we're like, hey, let's push on just a little bit because we think there could be views because of our altitude, and we saw the valley. Let's try and find the views.
And
drove
these were
through the
not
valley.
very
Yeah.
highly. Some of these trails were not very highly traveled. Let's just say that.
So
Yeah, let's talk about
apparently-
that. Let's talk about that.
Okay, so these guys tell me have eluded, I guess, rescue plane. About 2:30, 3 p.m. in the afternoon, I might be a little bit like a horse to the barn. And it's time to find camp. And so we went from top to bottom of this ridge. And what I learned later is that you guys thought I was moving faster.
Lou, to fast forward slightly, and we'll come back to Lou at Alcan Springs, who put my new springs on, said the problem was speed.
Yes.
Back to the story.
So we went down this thing, and I'm like, and Parnell even asked me a couple of times, so this is something for you guys to be aware of. You're your captain of your vehicle, and you are in charge, all right? So Parnell even said, hey, so in Obi-Wan, how would you rate this trail? What are your trail ratings? And I said, well, we start at 4-wheel drive required, and we go 1 through 10, and this would probably be a 4 or a 5. It's a medium. It's, and so we're bombing down the trail. We get down to the bottom of the trail, closer to where we found camp, and I forget who told me. Parnell, you told me, because we looked up, we had internet service, or we saw the sign, and you're like, yeah, we just clipped right down a double black diamond, according to what I got on my map.
Yeah, so the one of the really nice things about a lot of trails in Moab is before you get on the trail, there's a little sign that says, blue, easy, green, black diamond, and they had rated this trail a double black diamond, and it was in dry weather would have been not any 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
You need
some stuff. You need
good
some
tires. You need
Yeah.
some good suspension if you're going to go slow. If you go faster, it could be you need other things. But if in inclement weather, which we were getting on and off rain,
And it had rain, so it was already muddy.
yeah,
and-
it wasn't really muddy, and I think I would have, as we were headed down that one very steep, really narrow section, that turning around would have been nearly impossible.
It's point
Like
of no
when we
return.
got to that boulder is another
Point
good
of no
story.
return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we crested this one hill, I probably would have not been happy unless I knew we had someone else that was pretty close to us.
Yeah.
Now, we're in no physical danger there. All you do is you got to
Yeah.
leave your vehicle there for a day or two until it dries out, and then you could get out.
Yeah.
There was no flooding worry. We were close to civilization. There's no starvation where we had plenty of water. But as we started down that track, if it rained any more than it did, and there was a boulder in the road like we encountered on the one trail, we would have had a heck of a time getting back up that hill.
We passed cows that went, bro, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and so did you track that trail on Obi-Wan?
I did track the trail. It's awesome.
All right,
I recommend it.
So in Star Wars parlance, we made it in 2 parsecs.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
We
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
Right.
Now, here's another lesson.
It's a beautiful
You
trail. I would
travel.
do
You
just-
travel to Hurricane, and you do the trails there. And 4 of 10 is borderline for my 80. So that's a medium, and that's why I say you are the captain of your vessel, is because these different trails have different ratings from different agencies. Now in OB1, what we do is it is non-subjective. So when you look at the definition of a 4, it will say no vertical rise over 24 inches, and it will give you some guidelines, so it's non-subjective. But that being said, you have to make the assessment.
But Parnell brought up another good point too, and this was a different trail, and it just happens sometimes. Even if you look at the map and you see that the trail is a loop, right? It just depends. We rolled up on a boulder in the middle of a trail that we weren't going to move,
and we
no
weren't
matter what.
And we weren't going to like try and
There was no way, and so we weren't going to pass. We had to literally back up and go back out.
Yeah.
And so it just happened to be it happened in a spot where backing up was easy, and not muddy
and dry and rocky.
Place to turn around.
But yeah, so if you're going down those roads, to your point, and it becomes kind of sus because of mud and predicted weather and other things, just be mindful. There's going to be a point where you're committed.
Yeah, don't drive down a hill you're not 100% sure you can back up.
Yeah, and so we kind of crossed over a couple of those, and we were like, oh, geez. But if it gets any more wet, this could be bad.
But by the way,
if it keeps raining, then like what you said is, hey, if it keeps raining, we're just here for 2 days until it dries out.
But by the way,
we have 2 days worth of food. We have 2 days worth of water. We have shelter. It just prolongs the camping trip at that spot. That's all.
Adventure continues at that point.
And
but that's the point that we had but that goes back to what we said about the rescue, right? I could live out of my truck for 2 weeks in one spot, no problem. I had all the equipment. You do too. And so we got stuck for 2 days. So what?
Yeah. Now, so I want to make a point here, and I guess it's a little bit of a subject for me. This beautiful camp spot that we found, the road, the track goes right up this hill, and you guys all have had those experiences where you reach a crest of a hill and you can't see, but you just kind of inch forward anyway. And there's a reason we have a saying, when in doubt, get out. You go up over the crest, and I don't know how many thousands of feet that vertical cliff face
2,000.
is.
I would guess it's somewhere around 2,000 feet.
Yeah, we thought
and it is vertical, and it goes from the trail, and you can see people have driven right up to the. I'm like, did someone go over there?
Yeah.
And it literally goes from the trail straight down.
Pretend you're not being careful. Pretend it's nighttime. Pretend you're bombing up this trail because you got king suspension. You're flying. You want to get to camp. That is the end of the road.
There's no inching over.
The whole
there's
trail, the whole trail's going up like this the whole time.
And then there's a little crest, and if you decided to inch over that, you're gone.
And by the way, the rock underneath hangs out like 20 feet, and so
It's
it tapers
undercut.
up.
Yeah.
So if you got a heavy truck, you're going to break the tip of the rock off, and if you don't have parachutes,
Yep. So you guys,
it's over.
The reason it's a little bit of a subject is when you guys are out there, you cannot call your congressman. You cannot blame somebody else. There is no sign. It does not tell you there's a vertical cliff, and it just underscores you are responsible. And I'm not trying to be too heavy-handed here, but hey, just you got to flip that bit if you're new to this, and you got to flip the bit right away, right at the beginning. You're in charge. And you are responsible for what happens when you're out there. You just got to know.
Yeah, because it's not the BLM's responsibility to tell all these trails that people have created that have nothing. No one's keeping these things up.
Yep.
And so
it's your land.
We ran into the one guy in Moab that said they should put signs up. Why did they let me drive down here if this is like this? Well, you're in a 2-wheel drive car driving down a perilous road. What are you thinking?
In that
Don't do that.
In that particular sense, he came in through Canyonlands and there are massive signs.
In that case, he missed them.
He just didn't pay attention to the signs, but you know,
there's not always going to be
there's not always signs
that says danger.
Yeah.
Bobcat, bear, cliff.
Yeah.
This gets slick when it gets wet. Yeah, you just got to situational awareness is absolutely key.
Yep.
Okay, all that said, found the spot, camped there.
Yeah, gorgeous,
oh my
gorgeous.
Goodness.
Yeah, if you're anywhere near Moab and you're looking for a camping spot, Obi-Wan, look at Porcupine Ridge.
Now,
and there's a way to get there that you could almost take a 2-wheel drive. That's the way we got out.
That said, though,
we took the hard route.
That said, though, let's be very clear. Even if you take the easy route up, which you can do, you go out past Lion's Back and all the famous places, just kind of wind up through there. The last, let's just be fair, 500, 600 feet of that trail before you get to that campsite, you need a high clearance four-wheel drive. You are not going to take a Subaru.
You're driving there in a car, but it's not the way we got there.
We took the long way.
Yeah. So we did a 40-mile trip to go essentially 15 miles.
So if you do look at the track in Obi-Wan, know that's the hard way, and you can find the easy way getting up.
And the easy route to that area is real easy. The easy route to where we camped, you would require
a high medium. Goes into medium category. Yeah. But what an epic night. It was awesome. And I didn't want to have hot dogs. We ended up having hot dogs.
And cheese. Did you have cheese?
Anyway.
I did stir fry that night.
Oh, right, because I did full protest, right?
Yeah.
I was like full protest, no hot dogs.
And so when I'll just step back. So when we were at that really gorgeous spot and the rainstorm came, I woke up, and I usually wake up at 1 a.m, and I just end up, I can stay awake for a half hour and then I go back to sleep. And so I go, it's so beautiful out there. It's so dark here. I'm going to go out and just do a little stargazing. So I went out, I opened the tent up, and I stood out there and I looked up and I go, oh, look at the Milky Way. It's unbelievable. And next thing you know, here comes these little lights bouncing across the horizon. And I go, wait a minute. That's not a star. That is not a satellite. That is, what the hell are these little bouncing lights? And so
did you hear the Did you hear the X-Files theme?
Something was amiss the next morning when we all woke up. Well, hey, good morning. Something was amiss with Parnell. He didn't want to talk about it.
No one wants to seem like the guy that saw the UFO, right? So I almost woke these guys up, because I swear, if you saw it, you would have said, hey, what the hell's that? Something's messed up there.
Yeah.
But I didn't wake anyone up because I didn't want to be the panicker. And the next morning, I'm like, should I say something about that UFO I saw? I'm like, nope, not going to say anything about it. So I just put that UFO thing in the back of my brain, and I just said, I saw something that I cannot explain, because that is not, those little bouncing lights ain't a plane. It's not explainable. There's nothing what they are. So next night when we're up
but hang on. I wrote it off as you'd had half a bottle of wine. And
no.
Nothing wrong with that. You just see things.
Yeah, you see things sometimes. But I was pretty dang sure that what I was seeing was not normal.
Not naturally occurring.
Yeah, it was not a plane. It was not. There was no way you could look at this little bouncing slinky and decide that's a plane or any kind of craft. It was going way too fast. Yeah. There's no way. And then so the next night when we're up on the Porcupine Ridge, we're all sitting there, and I look out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, that is that thing I saw.
And I saw it too. I was like, wait.
And he's like, do you see it too? Do you see it too?
Yeah. I was like, it's there.
And so we saw this same little bobbly slinky going through the sky. And I said, I am not crazy. That is this thing I saw last night.
Yep.
You guys
see it?
Do you see that? Yep. And they're both looking at it going, what in the heck is that?
Yep.
Oh my
Now,
goodness.
fortunately, we had internet service.
we did
This
have
is another
internet.
thing
We
about
did.
this site. You have internet service
Yeah.
up there.
And so we looked at it, and it did not look like anything I'd ever seen. There was this like haze, so it made it really look worse. And
it basically just looked like a whole bunch of little dots following each other, like for a mile,
but like
and just
up and down. So first thing, Mike says, "Oh, that's probably something Elon Musk did." Sure enough, it is the Starlink satellite choo-choo train
they
going
call it
across the sky.
Star Train. If you
Star Train.
Google Star Train,
Yeah, and it trust me, if you're by yourself and you see this thing, you're like, that ain't right. If the first time you see that, if you have no idea what that is, and you've never seen anything like that before, it definitely is a weird.
it's freaky, right?
Yeah.
It's freaky.
And it was so funny to see it the second night with somebody that could see it there, and it was like, you guys are like, yeah, that's something.
It's always good to have proof of Bigfoot,
exactly
right? Like, see, I told you.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then
Yeah,
we,
that was amazing.
so to segue there nicely, then we got up the next morning and finally headed out to Chicken Corners.
Finally,
Yeah.
we're like, it should be good. Backhoe
Yeah.
did its job. We headed out to Chicken Corners.
Yeah, and
what a great ride.
ironically, so you go out of town past McDonald's, across Hurrah Pass, through
Yep.
some beautiful, beautiful country along the other side of the Colorado River from where you are on Potash.
Yeah.
And so you're literally on the other side of the river, and then head out to Chicken Corners along this great drive. And I was pretty shocked. There was places that were washed out, but it was basically just put a bunch of rocks and stuff in the trail that made it, probably went from an easy trail to kind of a medium trail.
Yeah.
Would you say that's about accurate, just
Yep.
because of the washes? But
And
nothing is as crazy as that crossing.
Yeah. No, that was not complicated. The only thing I think about going that far away from anything is just, again, being prepared to do it.
Yeah.
You know, yes, there's a lot of people that drive on that trail, so you're in a normal situation, you're okay. But that's a long way away from the beaten path.
So the books, and we did it in about this time. So it's not a loop. So you have to go out to the end and then turn around and come back.
Yeah.
So it takes about, moving at a moderate pace, takes about 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
To get out to the end of Chicken Corners.
And you want to take
Yep.
your time. You don't want.
Yeah.
It's not a Baja race. You're not trying to get there quickly. Well, most people aren't anyway.
Han Solo did it in 2
Yeah.
parsecs.
I was cruising. I slowed down because of the talking to I got around the campfire the night before.
Yeah. So, well, and there was also at that point, now, I don't want to run ahead, but there was also some interesting new noises coming from my truck.
Yes.
And I thought it was the propane ball.
'Cause we
So
got a
had
propane
stopped.
ball.
We can't build fires out here, but you can have a propane fire, and we have a little propane thing. It's always nice to have a fire, kind of like we have here, propane. And so it kept sounding like, I had a bungee strap around the propane tank in the back of the truck, and you just hit a bump and like ding, ding, ding. So it kind of sounded like that.
Yeah.
And I kind of wrote it off as this just the propane bottle, because the only thing I really changed or that was different.
Yep.
And that is a great point. When you hear something rattling, or you hear a different sound, or your vehicle looks different, or there's anything out of the ordinary. And my son is a classic example. He had an older Land Rover, and the CV joint went out, and he and his buddy are driving along, and it's so bad the dash cam is shaking on the windshield, and they keep going until the whole thing explodes. You got to pay attention to any noise.
Now we are, and this is a very good lesson. We are each a little bit guilty in not identifying sooner what eventually happened.
Yes, totally. And you said it.
I was like,
driving. I should have said something about that.
I was like, yeah, I heard a thing.
Well, so we're jumping ahead, but we'll get back to that. Stay tuned. But Chicken Corners. We had
Awesome.
lunch at Chicken
It
Corners.
was great. I had no need to walk around that little path. I had no need to do that, but it
wasn't as bad as it
beautiful.
looked without someone doing it. But
A beautiful look.
it's gorgeous. You're right on the Colorado River there. It's just a beautiful, beautiful location.
The end result is worth the trip. I think most people, if you're afraid of heights, I did get the Raptor through it. I had about 6 inches of clearance on the side, which is 4,000 feet down. That's why they call it Chicken Corners.
So
that's not
tight.
a chicken corner.
It's tight.
There's a lot of room there.
Parnell's kicking. So I got the camera, so I'm in the passenger seat. I'm doing a little bit of filming. And Parnell's kicking gravel off the edge, and And I'm like, okay. And he's like, closer. And he, he goes,
Well,
I'm like, no. 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 That's chickeny enough for me.
Just don't look down, right?
I was trying to make the video entertaining. And there's a lot. You can get any four-wheel driver in chicken.
Also a lesson. It's not about the video.
Right.
I thought if I got it's rock. It's not like it's a soft dirt edge.
That's true.
So, and there's no overhang there. So I just thought if we can get the tire kind of close to that edge to make chicken corners more chickeny, it would be worth it.
Well, you should have been in the Raptor because I'm 6 inches wider and it was chickeny for me.
Yep.
In fact, my proudest moment of that was I did not go over the edge, nor did I scrape my truck on the rock because I was at one point that close to the fender on the rock side.
You're wide.
And I got 3 to 6 inches on the right side. You're 4,000 feet down.
And that is one you would want to really assess carefully if you did not have support there.
So that's a great point. I think for me, I would have chickened out by myself because I could not. I know I've driven my truck enough now to know where my tire placement is, but it was so close without Michael in front of me saying, yeah, you got it. I was nervous. I was a little nervous because there's one mistake there and it's over.
So the 80 or my Jeep, I would not even hesitate to go around because I know how wide they are. But in your truck, without someone there, and there are a lot of situations like that, like the edge you have to drive up to get out of the beautiful campsite where the night sky was awesome. Without someone saying, driver, passenger, slow down, speed up, it makes it considerably more difficult. It doubles the difficulty.
There were moments on the trip on the path where the drop was the end of the road and Mike was out guiding me. And there are moments where I was like, Mike's my friend. I trust Mike. That's my mantra in my head. I trust Mike. It's okay. Just do what he says. I trust Mike. Because you can't see anything and it looks like you're on the cliff. It looks like you're
going over, right?
Yeah.
Well, you were pulling up on a rocky part to go around the trail, and what he couldn't see is there was 8 feet. Like you could have fit another truck.
It doesn't feel that way.
But from the dash, when you're up like this,
it doesn't feel that way.
You see nothing but sky.
Like when we were out on that little spit. On the one road, and and so we drove out onto a little precipice that was wide enough for the 80, but it was sloped on either side of the tires, so it wasn't it's not super wide, and that's gravelly and slippery. So that was a lot. To me, that was a situation that was worse than the chicken corners. Not worse, but that was a situation.
It could have been worse. Yeah.
That could have been worse than chicken corners because if you make a little teeny mistake, that is less forgiving because you can slip off the edge. Where the chicken corners, you'd kind of have to drive off the edge.
And I was nervous, and the reason I was nervous is, again, it goes back to kind of experience. When I'm backing my truck up, now that I have that tire carrier on the back, it blocks my rear view camera. I'm a little more vulnerable, and I wanted Michael to watch, mainly because, you look at it, and it looks simple. But because it's dirt, I mean, I know for a fact now, I got an 8,000-pound truck. And if that hits some loose gravel, there's no amount of gravity or anti-gravity measures we're going to take to keep that from just slipping right over the side.
Yeah.
And so it's scary, right?
Yeah.
Great destination. Really good spot. Certain time of day you want shade. We had shade. That was good, especially if it's hot. But yeah, go out there, have your lunch, or camp out there. Or, it's a great trek.
You can't miss going to Moab. I mean, a lot of people look at Moab and think they got to go up Lion's Back or they got to go through these Hell's Revenge. You don't have to do that. Moab is loaded with hundreds of thousands of beautiful acres of gorgeous camping spots that are free to everybody. It's a good portion of its BLM.
And it is I wish, we joked the whole time, I wish we could take a bad photo out here.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
I mean, it's hard to do that, right?
Yeah.
As so we left Chicken Corners.
Yep.
And we headed. Where did we go that night? We didn't camp there. We had lunch. We went back. We went back to Gemini Bridges,
Yes.
and did
Great BLM road, you know, little path, you know, that wound up. And now
I would say that was probably the most difficult or technical
yeah.
driving that we encountered.
And Mike, and again, being guilty, we had heard a clunk or two on the way back. And we were like, well, it's got to be that. Got to be that propane bottle. We got to strap that thing down better.
Yeah, and when I saw him driving on that trail, I said, man, that truck looks like it's sagging in the back. And then we just rode it off to, well, probably the spring sagging a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also, so I had, to be fair, to set this up, I had seen before I left Arizona, it looked like the back end of the truck was sagging a little bit.
Yeah.
I rode it off, which is easier to do on the trail than where I was at a gas station. I rode it off to just like I was sitting on a weird angle.
Yeah, because, you know.
Right? I got 18 inches of wheel travel on that truck. If you pull it up on something, the tires just move, right?
Yeah.
And so I just rode it off to, well, we're on the trail. We're hitting these rocks. We're kind of off camber.
And you drive it all the time. It obviously didn't happen in one fell swoop. So it's a gradual process that gets you to a spot that's funny. But I think it's the rattle or additional noise. 99% of the time you hear and you go, yeah, I wonder what that rattle is. Well, no. You can't. I wonder what that rattle is.
And so we did make it, and this was probably getting to this campsite was probably the most technical. All the places we'd been, which means there were 3-foot risers, and rock climbs up, and crazy hanging offs, and
things get serious. Like Parnell and I are talking all the time as we're driving down the trail. So we're talking. You know that you're in a little bit more technical situation when the talking just stops and then like directives start going, right? Like we would stop talking. It's like, okay, Parnell, jump. And he would go out, he'd spot me. It turns into all business.
Yeah, it goes from conversation about, food and steak and how you like your steak to, it sounds more like you'd hear something
rooftop versus ground
cockpit of an airplane, right?
And it's just like the pull-out situation. This is not the time to video.
Right.
Yeah.
Not that anything we did was crazy,
yeah,
but it's not time to video.
Focus.
Just, hey, let's get past these obstacles and then we'll, go on about our business.
So I get to the top and we're looking for a camp spot, and I think I have camp spot.
Well, we're not looking. We passed 5-6 beautiful spots. We're not so much looking for.
But Han Solo wants to go further.
So I'm looking for the epic camp spot,
which we found. We found.
So, but the BLM road goes around the corner, and then there's a spur that goes straight, and I'm like, I know that goes out to a bluff. We're gonna have a beautiful view there. And so we roll up on this staircase. I assess, I get out, I walk up the staircase, I walk down the staircase. I'm like, we can do that.
Did you take pictures of the staircase or video of it? I know I have it on my dash cam.
We'll find out.
Yeah. I don't think we actually videoed the staircase.
But
the staircase, to put it in the sort of common perspective, was not an easy thing to go up. And Mike's Raptor is pretty big, and it might.
I don't peer pressure, but I came down. I was like, Mike, you can make that. Come on, let's get up on that hill.
I actually, so in my mind, and you can see it again on my dash cam, I'll roll this footage. I, in my mind, said, look, I think the truck will do it. It's technically capable of doing it. Raptors get a bad rap.
That last step.
But I think it would have done it. Now, that said, there were two things in my mind, and again,
I think it would have done it.
Well, there's two things in my mind that if I look back on it, hindsight's 20/20. First off, and I told these guys on the radio, I'm not doing that because I don't feel like my experience to drive that truck was
super wise, you guys.
Sorry, I was not ready to do it. I thought the truck was capable. I didn't think I was capable of commanding it yet. Just like last year, I didn't do things. And I did way more this year than I did. I still am learning my truck 3 years later.
How many people would not do the same thing?
How many people would peer pressure?
Do not suck into it. Mike made a very wise decision. He's got nothing to prove. He's like, I'm not doing that.
I wanted to drive my truck home.
Yeah.
Which little did I know, that'd be challenging in itself. However, the other thing was, there was a part of me, thinking back on it, and I want to look back at the video myself, going, there's a funky sound coming from my truck.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering.
And I haven't found it yet.
And I ain't found it yet. And that will exacerbate it. I knew that would.
That'll
find it. That'll find it.
I will say that probably would have exacerbated the situation.
And so
that would have been.
And so
yes.
I think with another couple years of experience, maybe a year, I'll see where I get. And knowing my truck is 100% healthy, I would have probably taken that.
Yep.
But I was just a little down. And we were, 3-4 days in at that point.
Yeah.
I'm really tired. I was in a hangry state.
It's time to find camp.
I was time to find camp. I was hungry. It was been a long day.
Rolled up, decided to back away from that situation, rolled a little ways down the hill, found a great campsite.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Set up and had another great night of the relaxing, connect with nature, get grounded kind of evenings. And
Yeah,
you
that
know,
was nice. No UFOs that evening.
no UFOs.
So, Mike was parked up on the top of the hill, and we were driving on this very skinny little, had not been driven on in a long time. It was some kind of a track, but it was very skinny.
Yeah.
And so Michael has a way of saying, "Oh, I found a campsite," when he's possibly thinks there might be one somewhere nearby, but not really found it. And so Mike was up at the top of the hill because we drove down ahead just to check it out.
To call bullshit.
And so we say, Michael says over the radio, "Oh yeah, look at this! This is a beautiful campsite." And Mike on the radio up there, "Okay, does he really have a campsite down there?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think so, but you have known him a long time, right?" It turned out to be a great. In hindsight, it was a beautiful spot to camp. It was great. That was probably it was too hot that night.
It was too hot.
It was too hot. It was a lot.
And we went back that way, just to be clear. I think this is a good transition point too. So we'll talk more about the camp, but we picked that because it was back off Gemini Bridges again, because we needed to be close to Canyonlands, because the pinnacle of the trip was something I'd been looking forward to since I made this plan. Like last year when I was here, I wasn't able to do it because I didn't realize White Rim Trail required reservations, specifically camping reservations. And so I wasn't able to do it last year, really wanted to do it. And so this year I was able to secure reservations, get a campsite, and we were all excited. For me, that is what I was looking most forward to.
Yep.
And if you've already read between the lines, I said was. Let's check the camera. Let's check the camera again.
Still am looking forward to it. Still.
So anyway, we were close to Gemini Bridges again because we wanted to be close to Canyonlands. Since last year, I didn't get to do it last year. I wanted to do White Rim Trail. You have to have reservations with the National Park Service way in advance. They only allow 50 cars a day to go through it, and then there's even less that they allow to camp overnight.
Yeah, because campsites are
dispersed and small, and there's only like 6 or 7 of them. And so I was very excited. That was the only thing we had planned. Part of the adventure that Michael and I like going out with Michael, is that we don't really plan stuff. We just kind of go day to day. And I learned that on my trip way back too.
Because it's going to change regardless.
It's going to change,
Your plan is going to change regardless.
Well, we had the monsoon, so that changed everything, right?
Yeah.
But this was, okay, Tuesday morning, we're going to be at Canyonlands. We're going to go talk to the rangers. We're going to get going. So anyway, that's the plan.
And
that was the plan.
And we were on time. We rolled out of camp and Mike was like, well, look at this. We are on the dot. We started great.
Well, but what do you always say about plans?
Make your plan short. The longer it is, it's just a list of things that can go wrong.
That's right. That's exactly right.
The more you put on your plan list, the more things are not going to happen according to it. So make it simple.
So we had 4 things on our plan.
Yeah, 4 things. Basic things.
Basic things.
Yep.
Check in with the ranger.
Yep.
Check trail conditions.
Yep.
Check. Get down to the campsite. Do that. The end of the trail was washed out.
Yep.
They had told us that. They had people down there trying to move a mile's worth of washout from the monsoon by hand.
Yeah, because they couldn't get the tractors busy doing more important things.
And another underscoring check in with the ranger thing. The ranger pointed on the map, showed us where the problem areas were, showed us pictures of the washout, showed us current pictures, let us know what teams were on the move, doing what. It was moment to moment, up-to-date information. So check in with the ranger.
Very good.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, and even so much so, we ended up adding an additional night, because the initial plan was we would do the 97 miles.
Yeah.
And then we would come back out BLM land and camp there on the second night.
Yeah.
And then head back into Moab for further adventure. But because that was washed out, we had to turn around and come back, which means we were going to do a 200-mile loop that we hadn't planned for.
Yep.
And so fortunately, they were really nice. They let us set up a second night in the same kind of camp area we were, and it, for a very small fee, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, the reservations were not cheap, right, for the campsite. But then adding on another night, because we were there checking in with them and doing the right thing.
How much are the reservations for
So
that?
it's $50 overnight, and then it's $5 per person for the campsite. So that part's cheap. He didn't charge us a second overnight. He just charged us the $5 for camp.
But that's the best $50 you could spend.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Beautiful area.
We thought there was a chance that they may have the things cleared by the time we went through, so we might be able to make the loop, but we didn't know.
And I think that's why he said, if so, great. He won't charge us the 50, because if we keep going to plan, it is. But so that was it. But that was worth checking in with the ranger station, because it was great. We got all the information we needed, and we were off.
We didn't get all the information we needed. We got all the information that we could get from the ranger, because he didn't know about your truck.
He didn't know about the noise. So, so then we took off from the range. So that's the Island in the Sky Ranger Visitor Center, basically, at Canyonlands National Park, just as you go in. And then, of course, you go down Schaefer Trail is the start, which goes all those switch.
That's another just beautiful drive, especially in the morning. You got to do those things in the morning. That's an unbelievable, epic drive down into that. I mean, there's another 3,000 foot of switchbacks back and forth. Reasonably easy. When we did it, there were a lot of dislodged rocks and everything on the trail. They hadn't plowed it yet, but it was
just
from the beautiful,
absolutely
trip.
Awesome.
Yeah, and so this is where the noise in my truck started getting more and more relevant.
So as long as I don't lose steering on the right side, we should be fine.
You should be okay.
Every time, and I'm sure we have this on copious amounts of video footage, every time I did a switchback and turned, it felt like something underneath the back seat or underneath my refrigerator in the back was clanking. At one point in my dash cam video, you can see me reaching back, slapping the top of the refrigerator, because I thought it was maybe our beer and wine that was in the refrigerator.
Yeah, I had a wine bottle in there.
Because it kind of sounded like that, but really loud, and I'm like, damn, that's going to break. So I was just kind of banging. I don't know what I was going to do, banging on the refrigerator. I guess readjust the glass. But I just thought if I hit it and maybe it made that sound, I could confirm it wasn't. But it didn't. It would go away. It would go away. It wouldn't come back.
And then you hit that rock when we pulled off to let the nav tech by, and then we even looked underneath the truck at that point.
So here's why I missed it. So when I backed up, so there was another truck coming by. We were filming, doing some stuff. So I backed up, but I didn't back up far enough. You can't really see over the hood of the Raptor. And I knew I had enough space to turn over, but I didn't realize there was a giant boulder there. So I just slammed my control arm up against that rock. And I thought, well, that was dumb. So I get out, and while I'm waiting on him, I'm just crawling on the truck. I'm going to look for this rattle. But my attention was on the control arm, because I was clearly a big piece of rock on that control arm where I just chipped it. I was like, shit, did I just blow up the front of my truck? So I'm paying attention to that. I casually look back, and I'm like, well, there's leaf springs there. Like, I didn't inspect them closely, but like they're there. The back, it's fine. And that didn't even occur to me that maybe it's not there. Yeah. But then,
it was still there at that point.
They're still there. So we're traveling down the trail. We're all excited, and of course we're excited. We're just having a great old time.
And this is the start of an epic 100-mile off-road.
And we've been looking forward to this for a year, right? Yes. And to be fair, we'd already driven the Schaefer Trail switchbacks up, because when you come off Potash Road, it turns into Schaefer Trail and goes back up to Canyonlands.
Yeah.
And so, but once you go down, you turn left to go off to Potash and go back around that way, or you keep going for the White Rim Trail.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so now we were all in a place where we'd never been before, and it was all a new adventure, and we were so excited. I was giddy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome.
And then you stopped to record that little quick intro for you. This I was here a year ago. This is really cool.
Let's go.
It was
Hoorah.
great, man. It was awesome. And, you know, so we started the White Rim Trail. There's a lot of little, you know, high up, you know, close to the edge stuff, which is all it's about. And, you know, I'd stop, take pictures. And so I had stopped in a corner. I took some pictures of the scenery, waited for you guys to kind of catch up. And then I started to pull forward. And I hear this distinctive metal sound. Ka-ting! And I look out the back of my, you know, side mirror, and I see the little metal thing flopping. Ran over a piece of metal back there. Hopefully that wasn't my truck. And I get on the radio, and all this is on dash cam. And I go, hey, I just run over a piece of metal. I hope that wasn't from my truck. And click, and I just keep going.
And in the 80, it was Parnell and I going, looking at each other. What did he just say?
And then I said, we said, what was that? And he said, oh, you know, my truck had a rattle, but the rattle's gone.
The rattle's gone now.
And he's like, yeah, we're all good. And I go,
great.
I think just from a safety standpoint, we probably ought to stop up here if you actually saw something that fell off, and let's just take a quick look.
And then Mike said, okay, yeah, I'll pull over.
And so I crawl up, I get out, I crawl up under the truck because, you know, it did cross my mind. But you're in that, so this was a
euphoric state of.
So let's go back to something we said earlier. You're looking at this, you know, staircase thing, and I'm going, I know my limits. I'm not going to be peer pressured, and I've got my head screwed on straight, and I'm not gonna do anything. In this moment, it was like, you know what? I don't care. I can do 3 wheels on this trail. It's fine. I can do 3 wheels on this trail because I'm so excited about doing it.
You're in it, like you said, you're in that state, euphoric state. Here we go.
And so Parnell was reasonable and said, just in case. So I'm like, okay, fine. How bad could it be? And, you know, my first thought, and I even said this on the radio, when we were doing the rescue with the winch, Michael has a habit of just leaving shit places. You know, we'll get to that.
What are you talking about?
We'll get to that later. But like a wrench here, a wrench there. Like we went found
a place for everything in its place.
Yeah. But we found a wrench on the front of his truck where he was trying to bang his winch into place, and so he'd left it there.
And that lasted on that truck for a day and a half.
Day and a half.
The same spot.
And so my first thought was, you know what? Michael left the wrench on the truck. Like
that's what he said. Yeah, that's exactly.
So I look under there, nothing. I crawl up under there as you guys are pulling up, and I look at the leaf spring, and I went, you know, so back 2 years ago, year and a half ago, we put a custom leaf in there to kind of
really stiff, yeah.
And all we did was we took the factory leaves apart. There's a small spring on the top, factory leaf on the bottom, and a big stiff in the middle. That was made for a box truck. Was not made. We found out later that not made for all the abuse. Well, I looked under there, and all that's there is the top spring and the bottom spring, and there's a huge gap.
But it wasn't, when you looked at it at first, it wasn't initially like, wow, something's busted, until we really got underneath there, and then you could see where that other spring had been chowdering up on the frame and the exhaust pipe.
So on the driver's side, so basically that middle bar cracked in half.
In 3 pieces.
And 3 pieces.
3 pieces. How many springs are you supposed to have under here?
On both sides of the truck. And so that thing that I heard beating underneath the refrigerator was that spring, the busted part had worked out.
Yeah.
And was beating up and down to the point where it just fell out.
Yeah. So this piece is held in there. And so that's the only reason your rear end hasn't fallen out. Is because this,
and that's on the trail back there,
and
I heard that fall.
That is on the trail back there,
and on the other side of the truck, this one's trying to come out.
Correct, and I don't think we have anything here to hold that in there. And in my personal opinion, driving any farther is a poor idea.
Yeah, it was like at a 45-degree angle to the other spring, so every time the suspension traveled, and it hit the
and the other side was all busted up too.
Driver's side, it was already moving out the same way.
Wall out, it was hitting stuff it shouldn't have hit. you know,
and
sensitive bits.
So we knew obviously this was bad. Now, if you roll back to that night that we went to the Epic campsite where we watched the storm roll across. On the way out, one of those gatekeepers, I had actually set the GoPro down to film underneath the trucks as we come over.
Yeah.
If you still frame it and stop it, you can see on the passenger side where that leaf spring was sticking out already.
Yeah.
It's all busted
so
up.
Everything from that point forward was just exacerbating the issue. We were just beating the hell out of it.
Now, what do you think would have happened if the night before Mike wouldn't have made the wise call and he'd have said, I can make it up there. I'll do that.
That stair step?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we would have blamed you for tearing his truck up.
Well, I don't know who we would have blamed, but the front end of my truck would have been on state land and the rear end would have been BML. And there would have been a whole political decision over whose job it was to clean it up.
Yeah.
Now,
But I think that euphoric state you get in when
Yeah.
you're on these, you know, adventures, and a lot of times, especially if you've not done it a ton in your
Yeah.
life before, is just like flying a plane. You cannot go into situations and not be thinking 100%
yeah.
what's the long-term outcome of continuing.
Yep. Now, the outcome, if that rear end would have given way on the trail.
It's this close to those other springs snapping because there's nothing supporting them,
Right.
and then the rear end's going to go like that.
Did break while you're under power on the way up those switchbacks, and this rear end goes like this in there, there's no recovery. You're going right off the edge.
And if the rear end goes like this and you're on a ledge,
From a 4,000-foot ledge,
it's bad.
I'm tomorrow's news story.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's bad.
Or
Or
you know, thankfully, what if we were halfway? What if it had not fallen out there, or we didn't notice it fall out, or we didn't hear it fall out, and then we're 50 miles out onto that trail,
yep,
and the whole leaf spring
and the
falls
ship
apart.
falls
Even if it's
apart.
in a safe spot,
Yep.
50 miles is a long way.
yep.
So,
We got out the bubble gum.
and well, we didn't even have bubble gum at that point. The decision was made to cancel the white rim.
We were done.
And
Yeah.
it was not smart. And so we also decided it was not a good idea to go back up the switchbacks because,
Yeah.
again, to Michael's point, if something were to happen, that was not the place you wanted to happen. And
Yeah.
so it was actually, the longer distance-wise, it was safer for us to go back out Potash Road.
Yeah.
and
Because
go
we were
back
already
in.
at the level
Yeah.
of Potash Road. There was no downhill or uphill.
Yeah.
Ledge,
We're right along the
cliff
river.
ledge
The
kind of
worst-
deal.
The
Yeah.
worst situation at Potash was the washout, where we had kind of some little stairs there that had was pulled out by the wash.
Now,
And that's where we passed the Porsche that
Yeah.
turned around.
so and we split off a little bit because I knew you guys were going back to civilization, and I wanted to.
The idea was worst case scenario, get me back to pavement where a tow truck could get me if something went wrong.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Worst case scenario.
yep. And we had made friends with Navtech in Moab and Kyle.
Yeah.
We had talked to Kyle a long time, so I wanted to get back up to cell reception where we had a little bit of cell reception, make the call to Kyle to see if he could make a referral, which he did. He helped us out to a couple of spots,
Yep.
but then those spots were like, I want nothing to do with this. And so you guys went on ahead. I made that. Now we already touched on this in the video, so I'll make it short. But on my way out Potash to catch up with you, 5 times people rolling down their window, coming to a stop. That's the universal signal for I need some advice. So I helped a bunch of people out. We met up. You guys made it.
Yeah, we made it out. And then, we were trying to figure out what to do. This is where it became very interesting for me. I've always expected that, at some point you're going to have a problem on the trail. What do you do? And so once Michael got up to us, we were referred to a place called Moab Motorsports,
Yeah.
which ends up being Tow Mater's shop, which if you're not familiar with him on YouTube, go check him out. And he took one look at it and made the correct assessment.
Man, I really want nothing to do with any of this.
What are we looking at? What's the problem?
So, 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag.
Got it.
But the biggest thing is if you want to do this, and you're going to keep the weight on, you have to have custom springs built, multi-leaf, heavy-duty springs that are going to hold up to the weight.
It was a problem.
Yep.
And to your point, they looked at it and went, we want no part of this.
We want nothing to do with
We don't want
this.
the liability. We want anything. And the goal at that point was just, how do I get it home to Arizona?
Yeah, we'd crossed the threshold.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
like, hey, now safety first. How do we get
Yeah.
this thing back home?
And so he was adamant that he's like, look, our concern was at that point was not whether it was broken 3 places. We'd already lost one part. We did find the other piece on the trail. I have it in the truck. We picked it up.
We're framing it.
We're framing it, and signing it, and dating it. White River Trail. Moab 1, Raptor 0. But anyway, we just wanted to see if we could limp it back home, and then I'll figure out how to have custom springs made for it later, all these kind of things. And so he had suggested that we just, look, duct tape it up if you're worried about, because the danger, right, Parnell, is if that other piece would have fell out on the freeway, it could have hit a fuel line, a brake line, or worse, somebody else.
So the back pieces were, to me, less of a worry, because if the back piece fell out, and they looked like they were much more stable than the front pieces, and each of these heavy-duty box springs had busted into essentially 3 pieces: a 18-inch front piece, a little half-inch wide lift kit, and an 18-inch long rear piece. And the rear pieces were actually they were broken 100% in 2, but they were still in the same place they were, minus a little 1/8-inch gap between the other piece that had broken off of. But if that front piece came out and went into your tire, its freeway speeds,
70 miles an hour,
there's a
60,
catastrophic
whatever.
problem on its way.
Yeah.
And it had jiggled around enough back there that somehow the brake line, the speed sensors for the rear wheels were between the bump stop and the axle, and there was nothing in there other than those lines.
Yeah.
It was right on the bump.
Yeah.
So we got our zip ties. We cleaned that up.
So basically
moved everything out of the way.
Yeah. So his suggestion was duct tape it up, put some hose clamps on it, and limp home. And he said though he wouldn't go to Arizona because that's a 9-hour drive.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
it's
a long
way. I was really scratching my head about the dangers of it, all that stuff. But the other thing he highly recommended multiple times with curse words and other things was you're an hour out of fucking Grand Junction. Sorry,
You're so close.
He said you're an hour out of Grand Junction.
Yep.
Just go to Alcan Spring. Just get it done.
You're right here, and
right
they're the people. That's the shop. Yeah.
Now the people. Now foreshadowing.
Yeah.
So at that point, I decided I was pretty mad. Right. This goes back to I wasn't mad. I was disappointed. We didn't get to do the trail.
Cranky.
I was cranky. So we decided to get a room for the night. Just kind of sleep on it and
take a shower.
Have
a nice meal.
And we just talked about kind of
lick our wounds,
the dangers of driving 9 hours and the shape that it was in. And of course, I went to the Google right away. And, if you ever Google, like, I broke my toe, what's a cure? You have cancer.
You got 6 months to live.
So
he should never, I'm glad he went to the Google because it turned out for the right decision.
Yeah, so now imagine going, should I drive on a broken leaf spring?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you have cancer.
You're asking this question. The answer is no.
Yeah. The answer is no. Are you crazy? So I get up the next morning. I'm like, you know what? Hour and a half is a whole lot better with somebody than 9 hours alone through Navajo Nation in the middle of nowhere, Arizona. Even if I had broke down and I had communications, how long would it have taken somebody to get to me? How expensive would that have trip been? I had a choice to make, right? 9 hours home alone through Navajo Nation, which is beautiful but barren. There's nothing, right? And until I got to Flagstaff, there really wasn't anything. And so that's a long, lonely drive with a proper truck.
By yourself.
By myself. Or I could go with you guys to Colorado, an hour and a half away. Worst case scenario, they couldn't help, but okay, I ship it back from Colorado and it's still going to be expensive, and it is what it is. So we got up the next morning, and I'm like, well, let's call Alcan and just see what they say.
And then you had a tremendous vote of confidence once you talked to him.
I talked to him feeling like I was going to have the same conversation I had with Tomater of...
I was sure when we got there, he was going to go, I'll help you, but not today.
Yeah, exactly, or whatever, right? And so I got on the phone with him before we even left Moab, told him my situation. He says, oh, yeah, we fix Raptors all the time. They're they're not built for what you do. We understand it completely. He goes, let me ask you, he goes, so I'll build you some custom springs. Because I at that point, I'd made the decision, yes, we're going to build custom springs, but how long is it going to take, right? Like, and he's like, I'm 8 weeks out on custom. He goes, but we need to get you back on the road today, sounds like, because, you know, you're on vacation, stuff like that. And I was like, well, that'd be ideal. I said, but you should probably take a look at it first. He goes, well, come on up. We'll take a look at it. We can help you out.
I like Lou.
I immediately liked him and the attitude that he brought to the table of just like.
And the experience.
Just the idea that he went there with, we'll get you back on the road. We'll fix you up.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I was in today's strange economy and culture, service like they provided, which is mind-blowing. It's not just good service, it's mind-blowing.
Well, and now let's talk about that. So that was still on the phone. I just had confidence. I think I have it on camera. When I hung up the phone, I looked at Mike, I was like, I like Lou.
Lou.
Absolutely. And so we duct taped and baling wired our.
Because we talked to Deaver too.
Yeah, we talked to Deaver about having some custom stuff delivered, but it wasn't going to handle the weight. We didn't know how much weight actually. That was the problem. And by the way, the Deaver shocks the Deaver springs would have been great, but they were only rated for 500 pounds, at least what they had in stock.
500 pounds over stock Raptor.
But anyway, so we're like, all right, so off we go. We limped at 50 miles an hour. An hour and a half to Grand Junction.
That's about as fast as the 80 goes anyway. So
yeah, I had pedal the entire time.
And we roll into Alcan Springs, and we walk in and talk to Lou, and he didn't even look at the truck. He just said, "You know what? I got some 2017 springs for a Raptor. We'll put those on it temporarily. We'll weigh it. We'll figure out what you need, and we'll build you springs and ship them to you when we're done." And I'm like, "Hi, I'm Mike. Good to meet you."
Yeah.
And then he said, "Well, I will take a look at it just to make you feel better, right?" You see, he goes out and he's like, "Yep.
Just about what I figured. Yep.
Everything's right." And so, you know, I felt immediately safe in his hands.
Yes, I totally agree. And just walking in that shop, you walk in some shops, you look around and go, oh, I don't want anything done here. But you walk in that place, it is leaf springs, and leaf springs.
That's what they do.
And they're all neat and organized and clean. And I actually, when I assumed custom springs, I assumed they were going to be pulling springs and making a pack out of something. And when we did the shop tour of his shop, oh my God, these are handmade one-off
They get 30 feet
springs.
of steel or however long it is that is just bare steel. They cut them, they cure them, they bend them, they everything, right?
And then the mains and the seconds, we roll our own eyes with a forge. It's all done by hand. So once that's all completed, they're ready to be tempered. It'll go into this first oven.
It was amazing. And so I leave the Raptor with him, and we have lunch. We do a couple of museums.
We learn about dinosaurs. We learn about Western history.
It was great.
Yep.
And we stopped at REI it was hot, right? So we stopped at REI to buy
looking for air conditioning.
Some air conditioning and some, cooler shirts than these big, thick cotton shirts we had. And I got a call 3 o'clock. We dropped it off at noon. The guy that was going to work on it and fix it had to go home and feed the dogs.
Yep.
And then he would come back after he had lunch.
Yep.
They called it. So I'm guessing he was back by 12:30, 12:45 at earliest. 3 o'clock, they called it was done.
Yeah.
And we rolled in.
And we're all slack-jawed when Mike's getting the call. It's like done?
Yeah. And so we rolled in and we look at it. And it's like, yeah, he basically repaired it back to the way it was.
Yep.
He instead of installing new old Raptor springs, which would have been saggy and bad all the way back to Arizona, he actually built a custom leaf spring
insert
for the truck.
Yeah.
On the fly.
The insert that broke.
And then installed
He built a better one and installed it and put it back together and said, this will be good until we get the custom ones done, which I ordered and paid for on the spot with no questions asked.
Yeah. Yep.
Which, by the way, I want to be very clear about this. I don't want to give away the price here because I don't want to ruin his opportunities, but let's just say well cheaper than the Deavers.
Yes.
We and totally just absolutely custom made for your application, and he does it.
He weighed the truck. The back end of my truck weighs 4,000 pounds.
Yeah.
And he's like unequivocal, that's what you weigh.
Yeah. Yeah. And he, you know, I actually talked to him a lot when we were doing the shop tour about why they're bent a certain way, and so he pointed out when you have that big, thick single spring in there that's not, it can't flex. It just doesn't have enough room to flex. And so the one he put in is actually tapered down at the ends instead of just a flat spring. So, I mean, what you have now
is likely 10 times better than what I had.
Yeah, and it's not your permanent solution, but that's a permanent solution. That's not a Mickey Mouse fix.
That's a permanent solution if I'm not going out and doing the trails that we did.
Yes. If you were just if you're gonna operate that truck the way most people would operate the truck, occasionally doing some off-roading
with some heavy load back there,
though that's a permanent solution.
You're fine.
Yeah. In fact, he put on my invoice, do not jump truck until you get new springs.
Yeah, he did say that.
It's on my receipt.
Well, so here's the thing.
And I will say this too, again, about price. Literally super unbelievably reasonable for just the fix.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was because I was buying custom springs, because that was the price.
I just think
regardless of that.
I think
he wanted to help, and he did.
That's their deal.
He got us on the road.
That is, you know, certainly not sponsored by Alcan. I have Deaver Springs on my van.
I am now.
But that is a company I would absolutely, if someone said I need a custom set of springs, I go, here's where you go. There's no place else.
If you roll the footage back now and you look at me talking to Trail Mater, and he was just adamant, Alcan Springs, just stop talking. I have nothing else to say to you, Alcan Springs. I have that same attitude now. At the time he told me, I'm like, bro, why you just, I literally thought you're just telling me to go see one of your friends, right?
Yeah.
Not true.
Nope.
Not true.
Nope. He did us right by making the recommendation. Right. That's right. That's right. And then Lou, the thing that is really, really hard to find is, you know, somebody with a little less experience, they'd look at your application and they'd just wave you away. They'd stop with what you have.
Yeah.
They'd stop there.
Yeah, that's the solution.
Right, that's the solution. But Lou is like, no, I know what you do. We build springs for your type of vehicle. I know what you do. What you got is a temporary solution, but we're going to fix you right. You want to jump the truck? You put a set of our springs on it. You'll be fine. But don't jump the truck.
He literally told me, he said, Raptors are built to jump. He goes, so you got all this weight on it. We'll fix you up. When you're doing it, you can jump. I said, are you serious? He goes, oh, yeah. So we might test that theory.
I jumped Raptor
after we do the White Rim Trail and go to Gemini Bridges. Then we can test
these Parnell's bucket list items we didn't get to do. So
the adventure did not stop there.
The adventure did not stop there. Well, so we don't need to dwell on the next. So first of all, the next couple of days, kind of fast forward. So Lou gets us all set up. The next couple of days are kind of us licking our wounds and also erring on the side of caution. We're not going to go bombing down the hard trails with your new setup. We don't know the truck. And so we roll on forward from Grand Junction on our way to the Overland Expo and
honestly, just taking our time. So we don't plan to camp at this point. Didn't plan to camp. It was just a good drive. And we stay at hotels along the way, and the idea is to get to Expo, right?
As quickly as possible.
So we get to our destination in the evening. Great drive, and it was kind of funny because we ended up at an off-season ski place
in Vail.
You know, they give good rates, you know, in off season, and we're like, hey, this is pretty good. Why don't we just roll up here? Well,
did you ever see Beverly Hills Cop when Eddie Murphy rolls up to the Beverly Wilshire Hotel in the Nova?
Yeah,
that was us.
Yeah, that was us.
Yeah. We had good chunks, a good fair percentage.
We had 10% of Moab on our truck.
Dropping off in
muddy
chunks
in Moab
in their valet parking, and they're looking back and forth like, what? Looking like, anyway, so
people were rolling into dinner going, Buffy, look at that.
And
my God.
So, you know, of course, I get out of the 80, and our great valet there walks up to the truck, and I'm like, valet, okay, that's the way we roll here. And he's, of course, and I'm like, yeah.
Uh-oh.
Everything has a place.
A place for everything, everything in its place. And apparently the place for my wallet was 120 miles back the other direction on top of a gas pump.
That's correct.
That was the place for my wallet. So I lived off the bank of Parnell for the evening. I called the gas station, and luckily I said, hey, probably no chance, but I think I might have been in a little bit of a hurry and left my credit card and my wallet up on top of one of your gas pumps. She said, you sure did. It's sitting right here. I left my wallet on top of a gas pump 120 miles that way. So that was awesome. We, that night we had come up with a sketch plan around the dinner table, which is what we usually do. But let me tell you another lesson. At the end of the day, and this is, you are compromised at the end of the day. When you've been, traveling long or working hard or, whatever, at the end of the day, you are a bit weary. And so consider that a good night's sleep will go a long way. So the plan the evening before around the dinner table was I was going to live off the bank of Parnell. We were going to do the expo, and then we'd roll back. We'd pick up my wallet.
Because you got to go right by there on the way home.
Got to go right by. And so that was a plan. But man, that night I was out of sorts. I was like, I have no ID. I have no access to money, resources, no driver's license. I was just out of sorts. And so in the morning I was like, guys, I'm going back. And I was like, hey, you guys go on ahead, give me the address. I'll make the 4-hour round trip back and I'll meet up with you. And of course, Mike in the morning was like, that's horse shit. We're not doing that. We'll go back with you. So that's what the three of us did. We went back and we got it. And that gas station, the gas station, the person that turned it in, just totally righteous.
Yeah. And I think, not to get too philosophical, but if you do things the right way, I think that stuff comes back to you. So
it benefits the trip, which benefits all of us, Parnell. But we get this cheap gas again. That's good.
I also think it's a good thing to mention. There's a lot of bad news in the world, right? Generally speaking, we have not met a person with ill intent or a bad person ever when we're out on these trips like this. In fact, even from the point of Trailmater, the guy at the 80s shop giving us leads, Lou, and his lovely wife, and everybody, I guess that's his wife that works there. That everybody has been so generous. The gas station attendant, everybody was so amazing. And so people want to help. People do the right thing. People are good.
And
even the valet guy was very nice. He was
awesome.
Quivered a little getting in the vehicles, but
he was awesome. He couldn't find the emergency brake in my truck, so he backed it up against a post. Anyway, he was great too. And so underscoring a little bit of our philosophy, we say adventure is necessary, but that's one of the reasons is get out in the real world and deal with people one-on-one, because people are good, and when the chips are down, they'll help you out. And all this horse shit you see online, YouTube video, and the comments section, you guys just don't pay attention to it. That's not the real world. And so you got to get out there and just deal with people. And everybody's been just awesome.
It's been great. And which has ended up, once we did the 4-hour round trip to reset to odometer 0, we made it here where we're sitting now. To a dear friend of Parnell's, who will remain anonymous because they don't want to be on camera. But this amazing place in Boulder, Colorado, overlooking the Continental Divide behind us, and just took us in like the lost sheep that we have been.
That we were all ragged, rolling on in here.
It's just been nice to take a shower and kind of regroup and relax and just have some social camaraderie.
Thank you very much. I mean, it was lovely to stay here. Really appreciate the hospitality.
And now really nice. It's Friday as we sit here, I think. So we need to go get our tickets to the expo and check in.
Going to the expo
and start the next part of that adventure.
Now, hey, this is an adventure I'll never forget. These are lifetime memories. These are.
It is, and I'll just say this from a personal level. Last year, when I did my cross country trip, and Moab it was one of my favorite places. That in Arizona, I eventually moved to Arizona. I said, no matter what, I'm doing this again this year. And this is it, almost a year to the day, the same week. We were in Moab. I kept saying that many times, but I can't think of two better people I'd rather be with. Thank you, Parnell. Thank you, Michael. And if we don't make this an annual trip, I'm going to be pissed off because
Well, we definitely have to go next year.
well, we got to do the white rip track.